Cinema Classics is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center, 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.org.
The award-winning Cinema Classics is produced by John DeSando and Johnny Diloretto. Listen to the shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org and like us on Facebook.
Oh, good idea.
I'm Johnny Diloretto.
I'm John DeSando.
And this is Cinema Classics.
It is.
At WCBE.
Yep.
And, you know, we mentioned Ordinary People
Yes, we did.
the last show. And just coincidentally, we're going to talk about it again because we're talking about therapy in movies.
Right.
Have you ever been to a therapist?
No, I haven't.
Have you ever received counseling?
No, I haven't.
That's why you're so extraordinarily well adjusted, I would imagine.
No.
Can you imagine what a life you must lead? What perfect balance and equilibrium you must experience in your psychological day-to-day.
Those critical of me would say I'd survive because I'm emotionally autistic.
Very well, maybe true.
Anyway, but right. So we were talking about dysfunctional families last time, and this time we are talking about therapy. Like there are, and here I thought, in this topic, there's either therapy going on in the film, or there's therapy that should be going on but isn't.
Right.
For instance, we get inspired by current films.
Sure.
So we were inspired by the Sea with Brad Pitt
and
Angelina Jolie Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
A couple truly in need of therapy, and just trying to revive their middle-aged lives.
Yeah.
So other than that, I thought perhaps we could say a word of one that I know that you'll identify with in some way.
Okay.
Analyze this.
Oh yeah. Which I think preceded The Sopranos, didn't it?
Okay, all right. Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's kind of the broadly comic version of The Sopranos. So De Niro spoofing his famous mobster persona,
yes.
Seeks therapy from Billy Crystal.
Yes, right,
And,
exactly.
it's actually, I remember it being a very amusing movie. It was a big hit, spawned a sequel, which I don't know was as big or successful. But that's an amusing movie. It was an amusing play on the mobster and putting it, plugging it into that scenario made for just, you know, good comic fodder.
Yeah. One that I liked back in 1997 that I think had a good balance between dramatic moments and the therapy without it getting too heavy was Good Will Hunting.
Okay.
You know, I think the Robin Williams psychiatrist or therapist part of that played nicely in it, and the Matt Damon Ben Affleck combination gave it kind of I don't know, kind of an ordinary feel to it. And so anyway, that's one where I think the psychoanalysis is not obtrusive as he helps the Damon character become who he wants to be in the end.
Right. What function does therapy serve in a narrative film?
Great question. I think, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but I think it moves plot along.
Yeah, right.
Because when you think of the length it takes for any kind of a good outcome from therapy, it's
not that you would know.
Not that I would know, but you and others have told me. It's a long, slow process, right?
Yeah, of course, because you know I'm absolutely crazy. So 1 hour a week is like
I know.
It's like washing a car 1 square inch at a time.
Yeah. And then have it rain. And
right.
Back to
it's like Sisyphean.
Oh, listen to this guy.
It's a Sisyphean struggle.
Oh, excellent. Yes. Anyway, yeah. So,
yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of times where therapy functions in a film is when we have a character who needs help, and you know the therapy segments of the film often sort of illustrate or articulate exactly what those problems are and can they overcome them, or can they what do they need to do to move on. You know, it's oftentimes a bit facile because, you know, as we just discussed, the process is long, slow, and hard. And, you know, there might be a case made for the more interesting of these films that the therapist is is troubled as well.
A good one, yes, yeah. And it helps in the case of ordinary people, for instance, where we were questioning, and if we get a chance to look at it again, we'll explore this, whether it's an easy way to do the flashback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And that, it works really well in that movie because the Timothy Hutton character is, when he's tried to commit suicide and he's dealing with all these pent-up feelings and he can't articulate them. And the Judd Hirsch character, is this warm, avuncular, but testy personality who gets Hutton to talk and sometimes rage, and he gets it out of him, and that's dramatically interesting.
Yes, yeah, and I like. To me now, I'm beginning to see its value dramatically, because it would take such an effort to expose a troubled character on screen for 2 hours. So if you can have a therapy involved in that, you can telescope and get a look at that character without having to spend all the time for the character's arc.
Right.
Now, another one that, well, I suppose High Anxiety is just Mel Brooks'
his Hitchcock spoof.
Right, his spoof of that. And I have another one that I wanted to ask you. Oh, I know.
Yeah. What?
In 1994, Don Juan DeMarco.
Oh, gee. I don't even remember it. I mean, I
remember Brando is...
Well, for sure I remember, like, Johnny Depp kind of hot off of Edward Scissorhands and all those movies. Like, we were kind of excited about what he was going to do, and then he teamed up with Marlon Brando. I thought, oh, man, this movie's going to be interesting. And it wasn't.
Right, okay.
It was
but it is a case of where the psychiatrist, in this case, Brando,
right,
is asked to help him through his obsession with being the world's greatest lover. And I know you've gotten over that.
I know. It's taken me a long time. Therapy since I was 7.
There are some I have one old timer I pulled out, The Three Faces of Eve.
Yeah. That's Joanne Woodward?
Yeah. And that's just a real case of where you're trying to look at this split personality type. More of even more clinical by comparison with the other one.
Here's a question for you.
Yes.
Even though therapy does not play a role in the movie, Psycho.
Yes.
You'll remember the ending, the courtroom scene, which a lot of people hate. A lot of people hate this scene where the psychiatrist explains what was going on with Norman and how this happened.
Great example.
I love it. I think it's I like the way it feels right there. It feels kind of like, I don't know. What do you think?
First of all, I think dramatically I understand why people don't like it.
Yeah.
It slows the film down. It actually insults, in some case, your intelligence to have it exposed clinically like that. I mean,
I think, this is maybe getting into some dicey territory, but I don't want to say that audiences back then were dumber. I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
But over the years, we've come to accept, cross-dressing. We've come to celebrate it in some circles. Gender confusion.
Now transgender.
And now we have a better understanding psychologically of personality disorders. I think audiences in 1960 weren't.
Well, they were not as sophisticated. We just haven't.
See, that's the word I want to avoid that, because I think in some ways, classic film audiences were more sophisticated than we are
in subject matter.
I don't know.
We have a much better sense now
through experience.
50 years later.
Yeah.
And I think the transgender is just as good an example. It's not so perplexing a business anymore.
That little explication at the end of the film, for me, I can kind of put my head in that 1960 framework. And I think in some ways, when this guy is explaining the relationship this guy had with his dead mom.
Yeah.
And that he was obsessed with her, and that their relationship was so, you know, this imbalance of power screwed him up, and that he was taking on her personality. It's disturbing. Yeah. It's actually more. It's equally disturbing in the explanation of it, to walk us through his life and how he devolved into that that state. It's kind of, in its own way, terrifying. And then it's capped off by the shot of Anthony Perkins being in the holding cell, and he's not going to hurt the fly. Remember, like,
you know, that's wonderful. It strikes me that that once again we tried dysfunctional families last week, and this week we've tried therapy, and we've just gotten ourselves into a pit of trying, because, you know, obviously it's a very complicated subject, and we've seen that it works in films, and I'm wondering if perhaps they're watching our show, if Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton wouldn't benefit from watching our show, and perhaps getting a little bit of therapy themselves before one of them gives us 8 years of trauma.
I would like to see that scene play out a la Annie Hall, with a split screen.
Yes.
You know, where we can see both of them at the same time.